Have you ever stopped yourself from asking for help, even when you really needed it? Not because the help wasn't available, but because something inside you whispered, "Don't be a burden." That quiet voice, soft, almost invisible, controls more of your life than you realize. It shapes your relationships, your choices, even the way you see your own worth. And the strange part is, most people around you don't even notice you're carrying this weight. The fear of being a burden doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's built slowly, often in childhood, through small repeated experiences. Maybe you were told to not be difficult. Maybe your emotions were dismissed, or you learned that love came with conditions. When a child feels like their needs are too much, they don't stop needing. They just stop expressing. Over time, that turns into a belief: if I take up space, I will lose love. As adults, this belief becomes deeply wired. You stop minimizing yourself without even thinking. You say, "I'm fine," when you're not. You hesitate before texting someone. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said too much. Even in close relationships, there's a constant fear that your presence might become too heavy for others. So you shrink, not physically, but emotionally. This fear often disguises itself as kindness. You think you're being considerate, low maintenance, easy to deal with. But underneath, there's a quiet anxiety. If I need too much, they'll leave. So instead of asking for support, you become the one who always gives it. You listen, you help, you show up. But when it's your turn to need something, you pull back, and this creates a painful imbalance. You might be surrounded by people, yet still feel deeply alone, because no one really sees the real you, the part that struggles, the part that needs comfort, the part that wants to be held emotionally. Not because people don't care, but because you've trained yourself to hide it. There's also a constant internal pressure to be easy. Easy to love, easy to be around, easy to manage. You avoid conflict, you avoid expressing disappointment, you avoid anything that might make someone uncomfortable, but in doing that, you slowly disconnect from your own truth. You become so focused on not being a burden that you forget you're a human being with real needs. Interestingly, people who fear being a burden are often the ones who care the most about others. They are deeply empathetic. They notice small changes in people's moods. They go out of their way to make others feel comfortable. But when it comes to themselves, that same compassion disappears. It's like there's an unspoken rule. Others deserve care. I don't. This mindset doesn't just affect relationships. It affects your self-worth. You start measuring your value based on how little trouble you cause. The less you ask for, the more worthy you feel. But that's a dangerous standard, because it means your worth is tied to your silence. Over time, this can lead to emotional exhaustion. You keep everything inside. You deal with things alone. You carry stress, sadness, confusion, all quietly. And because no one sees it, no one helps. Not because they wouldn't, but because they don't know. One of the most painful parts of this fear is that it creates the very loneliness you're trying to avoid. You don't want to be a burden, so you don't open up. But by not opening up, you create distance. And that distance makes you feel unseen, unsupported, and disconnected. The truth is, human relationships are not meant to be one-sided. They are built on mutual sharing, both people giving and receiving. When you deny yourself the right to receive, you break that balance. You turn relationships into performances instead of connections. Another hidden layer of this fear is overthinking. You analyze everything: your words, your tone, your timing. You wonder if you replied too fast or too late. You question if someone is getting tired of you. Even silence from others feels heavy, like it must mean something negative. But in reality, most of these thoughts are not facts. They are reflections of your inner insecurity. And here's something important. People who genuinely care about you don't see you as a burden. In fact, they often feel closer to you when you open up. Vulnerability doesn't push the right people away, it brings them closer. But if you've spent years believing the opposite, it's hard to trust that. This fear can also make you hyper-independent. You tell yourself, "I'll handle it alone." You avoid relying on others, even when it would make things easier. Independence feels safe because it protects you from rejection, but it also isolates you. Because deep down, every human being needs connection. Breaking this pattern doesn't mean suddenly sharing everything with everyone. It starts small. It starts with noticing when you silence yourself. When you're about to say, "I'm fine," but you're not. Pause. When you feel like reaching out but hesitate, Question that hesitation. Ask yourself, am I protecting myself or limiting myself? It also helps to understand where this fear comes from. Was there a time when your needs were ignored? Were you made to feel like you were too much? These early experiences shape your current behavior, and recognizing that can help you separate past patterns from present reality. You are not that child anymore, and the people in your life now are not the same as those from your past, but your mind still reacts as if they are. That's why awareness is the first step toward change. Another important shift is redefining what it means to be a burden. Needing support is not weakness, expressing emotions is not inconvenience, taking up space is not something to apologize for. These are normal human experiences. Think about it this way. When someone you care about opens up to you, do you see them as a burden? Or do you feel honored that they trust you? Most likely, it's the second. And the same applies to you. The people who truly care about you don't see your needs as a problem. They see them as part of who you are. There's also a quiet strength in allowing yourself to be seen. Not the perfect version of you, not the easy version, but the real one. The one who sometimes struggles, who sometimes needs reassurance, who sometimes feels lost. That version of you is not a burden. It's human. It's important to understand that this fear won't disappear overnight. It's deeply rooted and it takes time to unlearn, but every time you choose to express instead of suppress, you weaken that fear a little. Start with safe people. Share something small. Notice their response. Most of the time, you'll realize that your fear was louder than reality, and slowly, your brain will begin to update its beliefs. At the same time, work on how you talk to yourself. If your inner voice constantly says, "You're too much," challenge it. Replace it with something more balanced. "I have needs, and that's okay." It might feel unnatural at first, but over time, it creates a new internal narrative. Remember, you don't have to earn your place in someone's life by being silent. Adieu. You don't have to reduce yourself to be accepted. The right people will not leave because you expressed your feelings. And if someone does leave because of that, they were never truly safe for you to begin with. At its core, the fear of being a burden is not really about others. It's about how you see yourself. It's about believing that your presence is somehow too much. But that belief is not a fact. It's a story. And like any story, it can be rewritten. You deserve relationships where you can speak freely, where you can ask for help without guilt, where you don't have to constantly monitor your existence. You deserve to feel like you belong, not because you're easy, but because you're real. So the next time that quiet voice tells you to stay silent, question it. Ask yourself, what if I'm not a burden? What if I'm just human? And maybe, just maybe, that small shift will change everything.